Hi, my name is Angel. Welcome back to my channel. You guys know what time it is. You can tell by the title, you can tell by the thumbnail. But I read 23 books in July, so we're gonna do my monthly wrap up and talk about everything that I read. Normally I order my wrap ups from lowest rated up until highest rated, but I want to try something different. I've kind of wanted to try this for a little while and just kind of do different fun things in order to order my wrap-ups, because I feel like a lot of the time I don't really look forward to filming these because I know it's going to take a while to go through all these books and some of them are not the greatest, so I just don't want to keep talking about them. So to make it fun, I'm going to try some different things. So for this monthly wrap up, I am going to go through the covers and decide which is my favorite and my least favorite, and that's how we're going to talk about my books that I read. So we're going to start with the covers that I like the most and then work our way to the covers that I like the least. This has absolutely nothing to do with the actual ratings, like they are going to be very scattered as we go through, but without further ado, let's just go ahead and get into it. So I think my favorite cover from the 23 books that I read in July is Midnight is the Darkest Hour by Ashley Winstead, which is also, I think, my favorite read of July, so it kind of worked out perfectly. I just think the moon and the sky on this cover is absolutely stunning. This is really a hard book to explain, I feel like, because I don't want to pitch it as a thriller or as a mystery, because it's not really any of those things. Like, technically, yes, it fits into that genre, but there's so much more to it. Our main character that we're reading from is Ruth. She lives in Bottom Springs, I believe it's Louisiana. It's a very, very small religious town. Her father is like the pastor there, or the preacher, and he's very involved with the church community and the religious community, and then strange things start happening. They find a skull in the swamp in this town, and immediately people want to point blame at Everett, who is Ruth's best friend, and he's kind of got this reputation that follows him around, so they are very quick to want to blame crimes on him. So it's really a story about the two of them getting romantically involved, but also trying to clear Everett's name and to solve like the crime and really figure out what is going on. There's a lot of commentary about religious trauma. There is mentions of vampires, because in this town there's like a little local myth of the Low Man, who is this like vampire figure that is said to be responsible for some people's deaths. So it's just had a really, like, a lot of fun elements, and I really, really loved the atmosphere. I felt like I was right there. I felt so attached to the characters, and I really liked their stories and the way things played out. I love the ending. That's definitely an ending that is going to stick with me. My next favorite cover, I think, is Sacrificial Animals by Kaylee Peterson. This I read as an ARC in July. It comes out later this month. I think it's set to be published August 20th. I gave this book 2.5 stars. It wasn't my favorite. I really was into it at the very beginning, but it is very, very, very slow burn. Like, it takes the phrase slow burn to a whole different level and gives it a whole new definition, because nothing happened in this book until like 70% of the way through. So in this story, we are reading from Nick's perspective. He grew up with his brother Joshua and his father on this very like secluded home in this very small town. His father was very brutal and very aggressive, and Nick was the younger son who kind of took the brunt of the abuse and was always trying to live up to how his father wanted him to be, but just never being enough, because he was like seen as the second son and just not really like that important. So he grew up and escaped that. He's in his 40s now, and he gets a call from his father that his father has cancer, and he wants him and his brother to come back to the home and just kind of spend some time with their father one last time before he dies. So he ends up going back. His brother Joshua comes and brings with him his wife. and immediately being back in this home and back with their father, the two brothers kind of fall into old routines. Things get messy, there's a lot of tension. It definitely takes a dark turn. I like the way that things progressed within the last 30% of the book, but I don't know if we really needed to wait 70% to get there, and that's the only thing that disappoints me. There are a lot of themes that I really enjoy about this one. It talks about Chinese mythology, generational trauma, toxic masculinity, and then we're also just following Nick because we flash back and forth between the past and the present, so we get to see him really trying to figure out things about himself, about his sexuality, about his friends, how he fits into the world around him. I like the writing. I would read from this author again, but this one unfortunately was just a little bit of a flop for me. Okay, I think for my next favorite cover, we're gonna go with The Midnight Feast by Lucy Foley. I don't know what it is about this cover. I just think it's like so striking with the green font and then also like against the night sky and the lanterns, and it's, I don't know, I just think it looks really, really pretty in person. I don't have the copy right now because I read it from the library, but I think it just looks really, really nice. So this is about this woman that is opening up this manor in her family's estate in this very nice coastal wooded area. It's a very kind of pretentious place. All the people that go there are kind of pretentious, and it's just got like this whole vibe to it. But a body turns up, so we are following not only the investigation of this body, but then we're also going back into a couple nights before and uncovering everything that happened with the different characters that are involved. I thought it was interesting. I feel like it was definitely predictable at some points. Honestly, I really don't have a whole lot to say about this one. There were elements I liked. There's kind of like a culty, ritualistic element. I liked the setting and being like along the shore, like these seaside cottages. I think it painted a perfect picture, and it was a really good summer read, but unfortunately I really don't have a lot to say about this. I think I gave it 3.5 stars. I forgot to mention that. My next favorite cover, I think, is The Fisherman by John Langan. I don't know, it's got this dark, moody vibe, the crashing waves, the very rough sea. I think it just sets a really nice tone for the story. This was another one of my favorites from July. I gave it 5 stars. First of all, the writing in this is fantastic. It is so beautiful, and I can't wait to get a physical copy and read it again in the future because there are so many things that I'll definitely highlight. I listened to this one on audio and a lot of things stood out to me, but I couldn't really highlight them or bookmark them in any way. So we are reading from this man who has lost his wife to cancer. So it's really a powerful story about grief and loneliness. He takes up fishing as a hobby, and that ends up with him befriending somebody from his work. And this man has also lost his wife and his children in a different way, in another tragic way, but they kind of bond over that a little bit, but then they also bond over fishing, and they just really kind of develop a safe space for the two of them to just be friends and to kind of figure out their grief together, but also separately, if that makes any sense. But one day this other man comes to him and he wants to go fishing at this creek that he's heard of. So they decide to take a trip out there, and they start to learn the history of this area and strange things that have occurred at this creek, and it kind of takes like a cosmic horror spin after that point, and I really, really loved it. There are just not enough words that I could say about this book to explain why I feel the way I feel about it. Just know that I recommend it highly. Next up for favorite cover, we have Last Days by Brian Evanson. I don't know why, I just like the simplicity of this, like the brown cover with this weird wolfman depiction on it. I really, really enjoy. However, as for the book itself, I don't really know what the heck to say about it. I gave this 2.5 stars because I feel like this is a book that maybe I was not smart enough for. There were definitely things that went over my head with this one. We are following this guy who was involved in some sort of accident where he lost his hand. Somebody cut off his hand and he had to like self-cauterize it. And he gains the attention of this cult. It's basically a cult of amputees, and they like to cut off parts of their body, and for every part of their body that they're missing, they go up a rank in like hierarchy within this cult. So they bring him in because he was a detective. I think he was a policeman or a detective or something like that. But they bring him in because they want him to investigate this crime. But it's very disorienting and very confusing, and he starts to uncover even more of the darkness within this community. Obviously, like, it's a dark community with the things that they do, but also the reason why they do them. Like I said, I don't really have a lot to say about this because I feel like there's definitely a lot of things that went over my head. So don't like let my rating turn you off, because this could be a book that you read it and you get it and you love it, because there's a lot of people out there that love this book. I am just one of those that like, I just don't get it, but that I think is a personal problem more than anything else. Moving on, the next cover that I enjoy is The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. I just really like, I don't know, that like little like pink paint drip coming down. I think it's just so striking with the colors, and now that I'm thinking of it and I'm looking at it after having read it, I'm like understanding why the cover is what it is. I don't know why I didn't make this connection sooner. This is a thriller, but it's more of like a literary thriller. It's very slow burn. And it's more about the characters, I feel like, than like actually upbeat, thrilling suspense. So I think I would call it more of a mystery. If you're in the mystery thriller category, I would put this more towards the mystery end of things. This takes place over multiple different years, but the main plot of the story that we're following is in 1975, and we have this summer camp, and one of the girls has gone missing, and she is the daughter of this very like well-known, very wealthy family, and they have this huge estate that is kind of on the same grounds of the camp. The two are like not connected, but they're on the same piece of land, so they're very, very close. So it's the daughter from that family that has gone to the summer camp and has gone missing now. But to add another twist to that, in the same area many years prior, she had a brother who went missing. So that case never got solved either, and now they are working on this new disappearance and trying to solve that. We spend time with a lot of different characters in here, and like I said, we go through a lot of different time periods. The timeline jumps around, but it's very easy to follow. But despite there being so many different timelines and so many different characters, I really felt connected to each character. I really, really enjoyed Alice's perspective. It was absolutely heartbreaking. It made me feel so awful for her. I think she deserves better, but I really like the way the story unfolded. I like the summer camp setting. It's a perfect summer read, and it has a lot of different elements that I personally just enjoy in books, like as far as disappearances and missing children go, and the very dark things surrounding those disappearances and what happened to these children. I really, really liked. I give this one 4 stars. I would recommend it. Just know that it's more of a literary book than a suspenseful thriller. The next book cover we're looking at is Your Utopia by Bora Chung. I don't know why, I just really like this one. I like the weird like yellow swirlies that are going on. I think choosing this little robot as the center focus of the cover was a perfect idea. This is a short story collection, and it deals with some interesting topics. Not only do we talk about like humanity and life, but we also talk about machines and robots and dystopian futures, and it was fun. The first 2 stories I did not enjoy at all, and I was like, should I keep going? But that's the thing about short story collections, is that some of them are going to be great and some of them are going to be not great. And it just really sucks when the first couple are the not great ones, because then I'm like, well, should I even continue? But I did have a couple 4 stars in the later part of the collection. Overall, I gave it 2.5 stars because that is what my average rating came out to. I always rate each story individually and then calculate the average in order to come up with my just general rating for the book. I don't have a lot to say about it. Bora Chung is the author of Cursed Bunny, and I do remember enjoying that one. So if you've read that one and enjoyed it, I would recommend this, but I think Cursed Bunny is better. Moving on to Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. I like this cover because of, you know, the bright green freaking font. And it's just overlaid over just a simple little picture, but that picture really captures the vibes of the story. But it's not, I don't know, it's not really anything special. This book I gave 3 stars, and it's a little bit confusing to explain why I gave it 3 stars and not a lower rating for the amount of enjoyment I had with it. We are following Ethan. When Ethan was a kid, he was having a camp out in his backyard with his best friend Billy. Billy was snatched from the tent in the middle of the night and never seen again. Now we're 30 years later and Ethan has returned to his childhood home. His parents have just moved out to Florida, I think, like to retire, and he's just there staying in the house for a little bit, but maybe he's gonna live there permanently. So being back at this house, he starts to experience a lot of strange things that he believes are the doing of Billy or possibly Billy's ghost. And he just becomes obsessed with this case again and trying to solve it and figure out what happened to Billy and bring him justice and figure out, like, is there a possibility that he's still alive out there? This book is very, very slow moving. Things happen, and then they happen again, and then they happen again, and they happen again. It's very, very repetitive, and I feel like the same things were rehashed over and over, and it didn't need that. We also got, like, so much backstory on Ethan that I don't think was entirely necessary for the plot. Like, some things, okay, yeah, like he has insomnia, he has trouble sleeping because this thing happened that was horrific in his life 30 years ago, but I don't think we need to read like 6 pages about his insomnia, you know what I mean? It just seemed like a lot, and then once again with the repetitiveness, and by the time you get around to the reveal, it's just like I'm exhausted of even having read everything that I just don't really care at this point. And then it also, like, there's a lot of different plot holes, which we're not going to get into a whole deep dive here because that would go into spoiler territory and take too long, but there are a lot of things that didn't add up at the end of the book. But like I said, despite all that, why did I still give it 3 stars and not a lower rating? I just like, I don't know how to explain this. How I put it in my like Goodreads review is I like the vibes of the story. And by that I mean it had a lot of elements that just personally do things for me. There were some aspects at the end that I enjoyed and I think brought up my enjoyment of the story a lot. But now looking back, I'm like, I don't know if I really, because I feel like it was just, I was so over it. And then at the end, for it to do things that I really liked, I was like, oh, hey, this is pretty good. You know, I'm really enjoying it now. But was it just because it was in comparison to the rest of it? I don't know. The next cover we have is Schrader's Chord by Scott Leeds. I really like how simplistic this is with the black and the red, a little bit of white, and then the like record fusing with the skull. I feel like is very like to the point. Like, this is what this story is about. This is a debut horror novel. I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I'll definitely be looking out for more from this author. Our main character is Charlie. He has just got news that his father has died, and he is dealing with his feelings towards that because his father wasn't like the greatest parent and the greatest father figure when he was alive, but you know, he's still trying to come to terms with losing his father and the grief that comes with that, and then struggling, like I said, because he wasn't the greatest father, so it's kind of hard to mourn that. So he travels back home after learning of the death And just to kind of get things in order, he meets up with his sisters, and then he finds what his father has left him to inherit. And it is this big case that contains 4 records that are labeled Schrader's Chord. There's a note inside that says, "I told you they were real." And Charlie immediately knows what this is because his father used to tell them a story about this composer named Ivan Schrader. Basically, the idea is these 4 records, when they're all played simultaneously, are supposed to open a gateway between the worlds of the living and the dead. So what does Charlie do? Of course, he plays them. And now he is in this battle against all of these ghosts and against Ivan Schrader himself in order to protect himself and to protect his family so that they don't end up dead as well, because it becomes very obvious that every person that's come in contact with these records and played them is now dead. I think it's really fun. The characters that listen to this record become able to see every single ghost ever. So it's really, really fun in that sense because we get to see all these different ghostly characters and ghostly apparitions. Some of them are more pleasant looking than others depending on the way that they died, but I think that was a really, really fun element as we get to go along with these characters, and then it really, picks up in the action and leading up to this big battle scene at the end. But all the while, we are following Charlie still dealing with these feelings towards his father and trying to come to terms with that and really make amends, I guess. The story was sad at times, but came around to be a little bit heartwarming by the end. I really enjoyed this one. I would recommend it. The atmosphere as well is perfect. It takes place in Seattle, I believe, and we spend a lot of time in this record store that was owned by Charlie's dad, and I think that was really, really fun as well. There's a lot of little music, what is the word? I don't know, just a lot of little inclusions of different music references, and I think that's really fun if you're someone who enjoys music, if you enjoy collecting vinyl records. This is definitely a book that will just kind of give you fun vibes. Moving on to the next one. First of all, it just started pouring rain outside, so if you can hear that, that's what it is. We are experiencing a tropical storm right now, sort of. Anyways, the next cover I have is At Home with the Horrors by Sammy Scott. I really think this is a very striking cover because so much of it is that blue color of this lake or wherever this house is at, and then the solitary house standing there surrounded by these big trees, I think is really fun. This is a short story collection. A lot of these stories have very interesting, almost Black Mirror sort of twists, but they also remind me of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. So if you were someone who liked reading those books when you were a kid, I think you would love this as an adult. So some of my favorite stories from this collection were Something Else Entirely, Blackbird, and Rebirth. And then the last story in this collection is actually a novella. It is called Meal Bones. This was my 1 5-star for the collection, and this is a story that genuinely scared me. There are not a lot of things that really actually freak me out, but I remember reading this late at night, and it was freaky, and I was looking around, and I swear I was hearing things, and I swear I was seeing things out of the corner of my eye because of this story. And it was a little bit spooky, but I really liked, I've never read a book by Sammy Scott, although I've heard a lot about this author and the different things that he has out, so I'll definitely read more in the future, but I really liked the writing and the tone of all these stories. It was dark and creepy and unsettling, but also very fun and very easy to read and easy to get into. Moving on to Reckless by Lauren Roberts. I like this cover because I just like all the greenery and then these red flowers and the petals falling off, and then you have that one object that is the center with the big white text, and I think it comes together very, very nice, and I like all of the greenery in it. This is the second book in the Powerless trilogy. The first book I think I gave 3 stars. This book, second book in the trilogy, didn't need to exist. This could have been a novella. It didn't need to be a main book in the series because it was way too freaking long. And this wasn't even a long book. Let me see. Oh, okay, it says it was 385 pages, but still under 400 pages for like a fantasy book isn't really that long, but nothing happened. Like literally nothing happened in this book at all. The plot is like non-existent, and we are just following the two main characters that they have this kind of like, they're enemies, but they're like romance, but then they're like enemies, but then they're like into each other, and it just like majority of the book is just spent with these characters and like listening to them talk and banter, and it was too much. What was the point? This could have been an interlude. It didn't need to be the main book in the series. It was just, it's like just a bridge to the third book, and I don't like that. Moving on to The Sad Ghost Club by Liz Meddings. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, Liz. This, I don't know, I don't really have any very strong feelings towards this cover. I like it, I like the way the colors go together. It's a graphic novel, so it's obviously in the style of the rest of the graphic novel, but I don't really have too many strong feelings towards it. I gave this 5 stars because I really liked it. It's a young adult graphic novel that really just kind of delves into being a teenager and feeling alone, dealing with depression or dealing with anxiety, and knowing that you're not alone and there are other people going through the same thing and you can find comfort in others. It was a very simple message, but I like the way that it was told, and I think this is definitely a really good book for those that are younger who are dealing with these emotions but not fully understanding them. I think this book could be very beneficial. Moving on, because I don't have a lot to say about that one, is The Last One by Will Dean. I don't know, I like this cover, but I also don't like it. It's very striking, you know, this blue water, and it's kind of like frothy, and then it's got this rope going through it and the white text over it, but the text is also kind of like in the water a little bit. I don't know. This is a thriller that is supposed to be super shocking. Everybody talks about the plot twist and it's unpredictable and all this stuff. So tell me why I predicted everything. Like not to be like that bitch, but like I figured out everything that was going to happen way before it actually happened. And I am not somebody that regularly guesses plot twists. At times I do, but it's not something that I keep in the forefront of my mind when I'm reading a thriller or mystery book. A lot of times I just go along for the ride and let the reveals take me where they want to take me. But this one, I feel like I didn't really have to think hard to figure out like what was going on. And it was ridiculous, and the ending was so dumb. We're gonna move on. This is definitely one that you have to suspend your belief for. It's an over-the-top, it's a silly thriller. Like, don't go into it expecting something serious because you will be let down. Moving on to Sisters of the Lost Nation by Nick Medina. I think this cover is pretty, like the black, white, red, and orange, like the very simple color palette. I like the kind of tribal designs within the fire and the way it's like all put together. Honestly, maybe it should have gone higher up on the list, but whatever. It is where it is. This one I also gave 2.5 stars. I feel like I had a lot of 2.5 stars in July, which is really disappointing. But luckily I didn't have anything lower than that. So you gotta take what you can. So this story we are primarily reading from Anna. She lives on this reservation with her family. She has a younger sister named Gracie. They have a very strained relationship. Anna is the victim of bullying at school. Her and her sister don't get along the best. She works as a housekeeper part-time at this motel attached to the casino on the reservation, and strange things have happened because a lot of women are going missing, and Anna starts to believe that maybe some people at this motel are connected to those disappearances. So when her own sister Gracie goes missing, she really takes it into her own hands to solve this mystery and to find her sister. There's obviously a lot of commentary about this, about Indigenous women going missing, and I really appreciated that, and I understand and I respect what the author was trying to do. But I think this book, just like the execution was not where it needed to be. I just feel like I just felt so disconnected in the story. I didn't feel like I was connected to the characters or really caring about the characters. I didn't feel connected to the setting. I feel like I had a hard time picturing things. And I also just didn't feel like really connected to the story or like very compelled by the mystery and really wanting to figure out what was going on. I considered DNFing this book. I stuck it out to the end. I don't know if it was worth it, but it's not a very memorable story for me. Moving on, my next cover I have is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. This is just the Penguin Classics, like very traditional cover, but I like the color scheme and I like the weird photo of the house that they used. I think really sets the good mood for this book. I gave it 3 stars. Obviously this is a classic. This is about, our main character's name is Eleanor, right? We're reading from every character, but Eleanor is like our main character who we start off the story with and end the story with. But she kind of signs up, or she gets invited to this study of Hill House by this doctor. She goes there and she is one of 4 people that are there, and there's basically like this history surrounding the house and a lot of stories, ghost stories and things that have occurred there, and this doctor is just trying to figure out like if he can actually measure like supernatural paranormal happenings and see if these people will experience it, is basically the whole idea. And Hill House definitely has a personality. I think this is one of those books where like the house itself is a character, which is really fun, but overall I don't know. I feel like it took so much energy from me to read this book, and I wasn't like a huge fan of it. I liked the way it ended, and I liked the atmosphere of it. This very gothic, like large, spooky house that is confusing and disorienting to the characters in it. It just was kind of middle of the road reading for me, so we're gonna move on from that. My next book cover is The One by John Mars. I'm very indifferent towards this cover. It's kind of at this place in the lineup because all of these books around this point are just kind of things that I'm indifferent on. This is sort of like a sci-fi thriller. I'm sure a lot of you guys have read it. It is kind of one of the OG book talk books. I just have never gotten around to reading it until now. I decided to pick it up on audio. This is another 2.5 star read from me. So the story is about this website that was able to kind of use science in order to find people their true perfect romantic match based off of their DNA. So people sign up, they send in their DNA, and it gets analyzed, and then they get matched with their true match. So we're reading from, I think, like 5 or 6 different perspectives. To be honest, I don't remember them all. I do remember Christopher, I think was his name, and he was, I think, my favorite perspective because he was a serial killer, and it's kind of fun to read something that makes you root for a serial killer. But other than that, like, the characters drove me crazy. I think they were absolutely insufferable, and they were so stupid. Like, that was my first complaint. Like 10% of the way through the book, I was like, these characters are dumb. Like, I'm not having a good time with them. It was entertaining. It was ridiculous. I was laughing out loud by the end at some of the twists. So this is one of those ones, again, don't go in expecting a serious thriller because you will be let down. I just don't really have a lot to say about this one, so we're gonna move on. Next we have The Body by Stephen King. Once again, one of those covers where I don't really have very strong feelings toward it. Obviously it's related to the story, so I get it. I get why it is the way that it is. I gave this 4.5 stars. I think my rating was related to the fact that I've seen the movie a million times and enjoyed the movie a million times. If you don't know, this is a novella that the movie Stand By Me is based off of. We are following these 4 boys. It is summertime, and they kind of hear this rumor about this dead body of a missing kid, and they kind of come up with this elaborate plan. Not really that elaborate, but they come up with a plan to go out there and see a dead body because they're 4 young boys and they think that's cool. And it's really just a story of friendship and adventure as we're following them out to do that, and figuring out where the real monsters in life lie and how that's often within other people. It was fun. It kind of like was almost a nostalgic read, like I said, just because I've seen the movie so many times, even though this book like came out before I was born, but it was nostalgic for me. And I did enjoy it. It was like the perfect summertime friendship vibes. Next is A Child Alone with Strangers by Philip Fracassi, which I gave 3 stars, 3.5 stars actually. I don't really have strong feelings towards this cover. It's not my favorite, but like I understand the cover design and how it relates to the story. So we start off being introduced by Henry. I think he's 10 years old, and we meet Henry and his father. We learn of the accident that has taken the life of Henry's father and almost his life as well. It's revealed pretty early on, but I don't want to like give away what it is because I think it's better to go in blind. But Henry ends up living with his father's brother as his guardian, and some people have gotten wind of the news of this undisclosed amount of money that the family settled for after this accident, and they think if they kidnap Henry, then they'll be able to get a ransom and get this undisclosed amount of money. But what they don't know is that after this accident Henry went through, he gained a sort of supernatural power where he is able to see, like visualize everything that another person is feeling and kind of read their mind through it. So he's got an advantage here with his kidnappers. So these people take him to this secluded farmhouse, and when Henry is there, he picks up on the fact that they are not alone, and there is a creature lurking around this area that doesn't want them there for reasons of its own. So it's kind of like a crime thriller because we're following these people trying to locate Henry and solve that, but then it's also like a creature feature story, obviously supernatural elements with Henry's powers, and then with this creature as well and the things that the creature does. It was suspenseful, it was emotional, it was gory, and it was really fun, but it just wasn't my favorite. One thing I'll say about this author is that he is really good at making you actually care about the characters in his stories and giving them depth and making them feel like real people. But I feel like in this story, because we had so many different characters with the kidnappers and with Henry's guardians and then the detective and then Henry himself, I feel like there was a lot of unnecessary details and unnecessary backstory, like just a little bit more than was needed for the plot of the story. And I feel like the story kind of dragged a little bit towards the end. It was very slow to start up and then it dragged a little bit. I guess to sum it up, I would probably say that I just feel like this was a little bit longer than it needed to be. Moving on, I read Golden Sun by Pierce Brown, which is another one of those book covers that I'm very indifferent about. It's just a black book with the title and then this gold thing here. So there's not really a lot to say. I gave this 3 stars. This is the second book in the Red Rising series. I gave Red Rising 3 stars. I gave this one 3 stars. I feel like as far as sci-fi goes, it's not like exactly for me because this has a lot of like war and a lot of action, a lot of fighting and like extended fighting scenes, which have never been my favorite in books. But I am really interested in like the world and kind of like that part of it, like the dystopian world and the hierarchy of this place that they're living in, and then also like the politics and the revolution that they're trying to lead in here. I'm interested in all that and where that goes, but I just get a little lost in the story when they're just like fighting and going to war. I'm not going to say too much about this one because it is a sequel, so I don't want to like talk about it too much for anybody that hasn't read the first book. So moving on, I read Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. Once again, this book cover really doesn't have a lot going on. It's red and it's got some headphone wire laced around it. This I gave 4 stars. This is a thriller. So our main character is named Lucy, and she was kind of involved in this mysterious thing a little while ago with her best friend Savvy. She went missing. Lucy turns up the next day covered in this girl's blood, but she has absolutely zero memory of anything that happened. So she is really trying to kind of figure it out for herself. She just really has no idea. And a lot of people obviously think she's guilty because she was the last one seen with this girl, and then to be found with the blood all over her, and then to claim that she doesn't remember anything just seems like a very convenient excuse. So a lot of people are out to like get her pretty much and like prove that she's guilty. So she gets contacted by this guy that has this true crime podcast called Listen for the Lie, and he invites her to tell her part of the story, and we go from there as we solve this mystery. This had a really fun cast of characters. There was a lot of like humor. Lucy herself was really funny and kind of snarky at times, and I really liked her. There was a lot of drama and it was messy. It was just a really fun and entertaining time, so that's why I give this one 4 stars. Next book I read is Such Small Hands by, I don't know how to pronounce this name, Andre Barba. This is translated by Lisa Dillman. This is a short novella and it's very strange. We have, oh, what is her name? It starts with an M. Marina is 7 years old, and we start off the book learning that she was in an accident with her parents. Both of her parents are died. She wakes up an orphan in the hospital trying to recover. So she, once she's better, she gets sent to this orphanage, and immediately upon getting there, all of the other girls in this orphanage are just like enthralled with her. Like, they are so captivated because she is new and different, and they just want to be like her, they just want to be around her. But then they start to take out some of their not so pleasant feelings on her, and things get a little bit dark. This is one that, like, I'm still not sure what to make of this story and the way that it ended, but I like the way that it was told. The writing, the translation, the tone of the story is so weird and unsettling. Like, it's such a strange book, but it's also very immersive. Like, you are sucked in and you just want to know, like, what is going on with these girls at this orphanage and like what is happening. It gets dark, but not like super dark, like not as dark as I was expecting, but definitely dark. I would recommend this, and I like to read what other people have to say about this one because, like I said, the way that it ended, I'm still trying to figure out what to make of it. That rain is really coming down now. The next book we have is The Summer I Died by Ryan C. Thomas. Honestly, I really just, I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of this cover. Like, it's pretty like straightforward. Like, that is what the story is, but I don't know. I also wasn't the biggest fan of this book. I gave it 3 stars. This is an extreme horror, like splatterpunk book. We have these 2 guys that are out like in the mountains hiking and getting high pretty much, and they hear this woman screaming for help. They decide to go investigate. They find this house out there in the mountains and this crazy guy that is torturing this woman, and obviously they get taken and held captive and tortured, and horrific things ensue, and we are just following our main character as he's trying to get out of this situation. I feel like this book was just okay. I don't know. I don't have a lot of strong feelings towards it. I think in extreme horror, for me to like actually enjoy extreme horror, I think there needs to be more things going on. Like, it has to have good writing, and it has to have characters that I actually really care about. Not that I necessarily didn't care about the characters in here, but I just like didn't feel super connected to them. And I feel like the writing itself, the story itself, was lacking in some ways. But if you just want some extreme horror that takes place in the summertime, this is it. And last but not least is The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. This book definitely has a lot of different covers out there because it is so old. This is the one that I specifically read from my library. I don't like it because I don't like this weird like color block situation that's going on, and this like mint green color, like where does that come from? I don't understand it. So that's why it's at the end of this lineup. I gave this 4 stars. This is a pretty classic ghost story. We have this man who works as a solicitor, and he has to go to this town because this woman who owns this big estate has just died. So I guess he has to go there and like sort out all of the like funeral no, well, he doesn't have to sort out the funeral arrangements, but he has to like, I don't know, sort out all her like paperwork and like figure out all the stuff with the estate and all the legal stuff, I guess, because she has nobody else. I don't really understand it, but he goes there. It's this big house in this very isolated area that has a dark history, which he learns very quickly, and sees some ghostly apparitions. I really like this because it was kind of slow building, but also like non-urgent feeling at the beginning, where he starts seeing this ghostly apparition and he's like, oh, that's so weird, but it's like not really trying to harm him, so it's like, oh, whatever. But the minute it changes and does start to take a darker twist, he's like, no, fuck this, I'm out of here. And I just really like that. I don't know why. I think this would be a really good like October spooky season read that I would definitely recommend if you just want like a little classic ghost story. So that brings us to the end. That is all 23 books that I read in July. If you've read any of these, let me know down below what your thoughts were. Let me know if you have a favorite out of all of these covers, if you agree with me or not. But with all of that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.